Ready. Good evening. Welcome to everyone. We are going to call to order the Board of Appeals meeting for October 15th. Let's stand and we'll have a pledge of allegiance. Flag is where?
Behind you.
Oh, right behind me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, welcome to everyone who is here. We have review and approval of the minutes from our April 30th meeting that we need to go over. Were there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Anything that you saw, Scott? Anything that you saw, Wayne?
No.
All right, we're good. Did just want to add an S. Yes.
To approve the minutes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. you were
Right.
still going on that.
Yeah, I wasn't
beg your
quite
pardon.
finished.
That's all right. Beg your pardon.
But Leslie, thank you, because I can make so many mistakes. I want you right there to jump in. Trust me.
I shouldn't have jumped.
No, I definitely appreciate it. I did just want to add that we should probably put an S on the end of Board of Appeals meeting minutes. It's just a little tiny thing, but you know, I like to make sure those are right. Other than that, I think it was an excellent job. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with just that one correction? All right, made by Wayne, seconded by Scott. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, now we're going to swear in the witnesses. So anyone who plans to speak at all must be sworn in under oath. So if you would please stand, anyone who intends to speak. All right. All right, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the response given and statements made by you in these proceedings will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do.
I do.
All right, thank you very much. Just curious if we have anyone on the Zoom meeting.
Yes, one person.
We do? All right. Did that person sign up to speak? Okay, just an observation then. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure about that. Okay, good. New business, 103 to 105 West Main Street. This is a request for a special exception. Introduction of the case. What we have here is a request for a special exception granting student housing permission for the special exception. It seems that the documents are all clear. It looks like, and we will go over this, of course, but it looks like the all of the conditions have been at least explained. So that is the introduction of this. Could I have a presentation of the case by the staff?
Hi, good evening. So the applicant is requesting a special exception to permit student housing at 101 and 105 West Main Street. The property lies in the village zone where student housing is allowed by special exception. An ordinance was passed on June 2nd, 2025, allowing student housing with the special exception. So the property in question was cited for operating as a student house without the proper approvals. So that was back in January 2023. And in September 2023, zoning permits were revoked and multiple citations were issued for occupying the property without an occupancy permit. missing meter, water meter and backflow inspection and non-compliance with parking and trash containment requirements. And then the town paused the enforcement to allow the owner to pursue a zoning text amendment that would formally recognize student housing as a permitted use by special exception. And as I mentioned, on June 2nd, 2025, the Board of Commissioners adopted Ordinance 25-02 codifying the pathway under Section 17.36.090. And the owner is now seeking to bring the property into compliance by obtaining a special exception under the updated ordinance. So the applicable code requirements include the student housing conditions. It would have to have one off-street parking space per bedroom, trash containment at rear, screen from view, maximum one student per bedroom. This property has 11 bedrooms. And compliance with International Building Code. And property must not be within 500 feet of another student housing or boarding house. And for standards for special exceptions is that, it must not adversely affect health, welfare, safety, or orderly development. And it must align with the comprehensive plan. And it must also consider traffic, public services, neighborhood character, and property values. So the proposed student housing use aligns with the downtown revitalization plan that's been outlined in the comprehensive plan. The site is adequately served by town water, sewer, trash, and fire protection services. And there's no adverse impact on capacity or service provision. The use is residential in nature and generally compatible with the mixed-use village zone. And the potential for noise issues can be mitigated through lease enforcement and town code and compliance. And off-street parking is available at the rear of the property with additional spaces secured nearby. And the traffic impacts are expected to remain typical for residential use. Any historic or property value considerations, the property's rehabilitation contributes to the preservation of historic downtown structure, and the occupancy and investment support is lawful. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, it aligns with the 2025 comprehensive plan and Vision Emmitsburg, which promotes adaptive reuse of existing buildings, housing diversity, downtown revitalization, and the proposal is consistent with those goals. I do want to mention that under the conditions for approval, we would like to get rid of the outstanding citation has been resolved.
Okay, so the fine has been paid.
Yes.
There are no issues regarding outstanding violations or citations.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that wasn't clear on this because it was to be done by the 7th of October. So, okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, sure. And so all the other conditions include, maintain the parking space, store trash and screened receptacles at the rear of the property, ensure occupancy of one student per bedroom, and verify the property is not located within 500 feet of another student housing. We have checked our estate records and didn't find another student housing to the scale within 500 feet radius.
Right.
So, yeah, I think those are it. So if you could cite your reason for approval or denial for the record.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I'd just like to ask if you received any comments or testimony from anyone on the outside.
Regarding any noise?
Regarding this case.
No.
Okay. I know sometimes people write in comments. I just wanted to make sure there were none addressed to you or the town office for this particular case. Okay, thank you. And now we'll have the presentation of the case by the applicant.
my name is Brandy Peoples and I'm the attorney for the applicant, Jeremiah Ott, who's with me this evening. I kind of want to take you back a little bit.
Could you make sure that you're talking
Can you hear me?
to the mic? Because we do have somebody on Zoom.
I am so bad about that. I apologize.
That's all right. Just almost
Um,
eat it.
I kind of want to give a little history because I think it gives context into this specific case and kind of why we're here. And throughout the almost many months that it took for us to get a text amendment passed, because we were the original applicant for the text amendment as well. One evening, we had a Board of Appeals member sit there and ask us, and she said, "Why are we here?" And I was like, "Well, because the town is telling us we're not in compliance because we're renting to students." And she's like, "But I don't understand." And so I went into this explanation as to why we actually are here. And there's this really ugly Supreme Court case that was called the Village of Belterre versus Boras, where they kind of looked at the definition of a family. And they upheld in that case a local town's zoning ordinance that said, if you have so many unrelated people living together, that's just not possible. You have to have true families living together, and that preserves the integrity of neighborhoods. And because of that ugly case, you had all these areas, the municipalities, counties, some even states in their zoning ordinances and in their enabling statutes, which really codified what this definition of family was and why this concept of student housing renting to a bunch of unrelated individuals was problematic. Except now, fast forward many years later, you have towns where there are colleges and housing at certain universities is a problem. And so you do have essentially a residential use, and the only thing making it different is you've got a bunch of unrelated people living there. So I would urge the board to consider in the context of what this use is. You hear the word student housing and it's a buzzword, right? But it's still a residential use. I could rent to a family, and a family could probably be more obnoxious than a bunch of graduate students studying for a PhD. So I urge you not to get wrapped up in this concept of students and thinking, oh, it's a sorority house, because that is another special exception under our code. I want you to think about residential uses and the fact that in this context, student housing means long-term leases. We're not Airbnbs. We don't have transient people going back and forth. These are bona fide leases between the landlord and the people residing there. They're renting rooms. And under these leases, landlords can control things like you must comply with rules, you must comply with laws, complaints about noise, as it would be in any apartment complex or in any private residence not being rented to students, can be addressed by virtue of a lease. So other than the fact that you're talking about unrelated people, the landlord-tenant concept essentially is the same. You have a bunch of people living in a house, one person a bedroom, and they're not quite common a family unit, but they share a kitchen. They come and go as they please, but they're still subjected to leases just like any other landlord-tenant situation. I mean, they can be evicted under Frederick County Code for failure to pay rent if they breach the lease. A material breach of the lease could be incessant noise, ongoing parties. There are remedies under Frederick County law by which we can evict them. We send them a notice, they're in violation of the lease, give them a certain amount of days to remedy this, and then they can leave. And the reason why I go into this as part of my presentation is I want to emphasize that this is a residential use in the village zone. And the reason why I say that is because residential typically is less intense than the uses already permitted in the village zone. Go out on Main Street, restaurants, bars, other kind of establishments are permitted that generate more traffic, more noise than a residential housing use. So I kind of, you're not going to have the utility loads. You're not going to have the traffic loads. You're not going to have any kind of adverse impacts other than any other residential use. The thing that I want to also emphasize to this board under zoning laws is that the fact that you approved or the town approved student housing under a text amendment means that the town has already recognized that there's a presumption of validity to this use in this zone. And under appropriate Maryland law, you must approve the special exception unless there's some kind of compelling site-specific evidence that says that this use is not appropriate for this particular site. Now, addressing my client's application, the ordinance, the student housing ordinance for the town of Emmitsburg requires 1 parking spot per bedroom, which we have. We have secured additional parking spots through a neighboring property, so parking is not an issue. We have trash containment so that it will be screened and shielded in appropriate containers. The building complies with all applicable codes. In fact, the building was renovated along with the town at the behest of the town. So the town was involved in this renovation project with the town planner from the beginning. I mean, we actually deferred to what the town wanted. I mean, my client can testify that there were discussions at the very beginning of bringing this building back. And I don't know how familiar the board is with what this building used to look like, but it was derelict. It was in disrepair. It sat for a very long time. And not only did my client come in and renovate it, he renovated it with very high-end materials, and he wanted to make it a very attractive building. The town was involved every step of the way. The town actually suggested that we have 2 separate units versus 3. So to defer to the town and how we renovated the project shows a perspective. We tried to do what's right. We wanted to comply with the town. At the time that this was all done, we were unaware that there was a student housing issue or a rooming house or boarding house issue. And all those steps led us to where we're here tonight. This is also a good adaptive reuse for this particular property on Main Street. Again, you're having a residential use, less intensive, not a restaurant. It's not going to clog traffic on Main Street. It revitalizes Main Street. It brings people into downtown Emmitsburg to spend their dollars at other establishments on Main Street. I think that it encourages a continued growth in the downtown area of Emmitsburg. That's a positive benefit. It's a win for the university. It's a win for the town. I have looked and tried to examine everything that evidentiary I could find in terms of this particular house, and is there any evidence at all of any adverse impacts? I mean, arguably we're here and we were cited because there may have been noise complaints or whatever about students, but I urge the board again, that could happen if you rented to an obnoxious family. I mean, it's not just limited to students who could be problematic tenants in any kind of residence. And reminding you again that having a lease or something like that controls and has terms that control what your tenants are obligated to do, including compliance with laws and ordinances, mitigates that. So combining the Emmitsburg Town Code, the fact that we have met the elements of what the special exception requires, there are no outstanding citations. And I think that we want to be a good neighbor. We want to work with the town. I would respectfully request that you approve our special exception application. If you have any questions for my client who owns the building and what he did, he's right here with me and can speak. But what I really want to hone in on is this is a residential use. And so long as we have leases in place that address potential problems, I don't think there will be any problems. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Ms. Peebles? Yes, Wayne.
My name's Wayne Slaughter, and I live up in Silo Hill, and I walk.
Could you speak into the microphone? Sorry.
I walk
Thank you.
down to the park regularly, and I've passed by that house on many occasions, and I've been able to follow the progress to some large extent. I just wanted to say, I think you've done a great job. The exterior of it is very attractive, and I think it complements the neighborhood nicely. I have not been inside, So I don't know what it looks like in there. I'm assuming that the same level or quality of work was applied to the inside. And from an aesthetics perspective, it's pleasing to look at. I assume it also has all the amenities and et cetera. So I wouldn't imagine that it wouldn't be in compliance. My issue has to do with parties, which are, call it unauthorized, and the tenants will on their own occasion throw those parties. I rather doubt you as the owner or landlord in this case are going to be notified in advance. When that does happen, sometimes those parties get much larger than was planned on. And I would consider that location to be somewhat dangerous for people that were inebriated, which is quite possible at a party like that. Having come from a college town myself, I've seen plenty of this. I don't know what kind of policing you can do to control that. I don't know what the level of students you have in terms of their educational standing is. I know I completed doctoral work, and doctoral students are far different than undergrads. I don't know who's going to be residing there, but you'd have to keep all that in mind. Because one mistake, somebody slipping out onto the street or what have you at that place with the cars going by on Main Street and you have an accident, and it would be a completely different set of circumstances at that point. So I only have some concerns about your shepherding, if you want to call it, your stewardship of this. What you're going to do with those students to make sure that they comply with decency and safety.
Would you like to ask Mr. Ott, or would you rather ask Ms. Peoples?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so,
All right, thank you. Please state your name and your
my name is,
location.
Jeremiah Ott. Yep, I'm the owner of the property. We actually, we have a person that works in our management group that works for me that checks in there at least once a week with the actually internal part of the property, because I did put a substantial amount of money into that property.
Sure.
As if I was going to live there. Like I pointed all the fireplaces up. I mean, it upped the value of the town, right? So I'm not going to let anything devalue that property, right? So I put a lot of thought into the process of trying to maintain as much as I could of it, right? Of the aesthetics. So we actually have someone that goes in there and checks once a week, right? On everything. And we also check with the neighboring people if there's any complaints.
Okay.
That includes the fire hall, right? The people's on the left and the right of us. So yeah, my management person goes in there once a week.
All right.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, anything
To-
else?
To
for-
further elaborate, Mr. Slaughter, I would submit that if this were renting to a family that just had parties, it's the same problem. It's this concept of students and parties, and I was a college student. I was
Sure.
been there, done that.
We've all been there.
We've all lived that. But in terms of, we can be proactive. There are terms within leases that prohibit, I draft a lot of leases. I can, going forward, put terms in there that mitigate the amount of people that can be on the property at one time. I can, we can have rules that say no parties. So there are things that we can do if you're genuinely concerned. But I would also argue that given the history of this property, it's not something that's likely to occur. And if it does occur, we will address it.
Okay. I just have one final comment on that. The parties and all that can be disruptive and unruly. It does happen. I understand. And in many cases, they're contained and managed well. But that property sits right on Main Street, and call it drunkenness could lead to somebody stumbling out of that property and out onto Main Street. Could lead to a pedestrian accident where somebody gets hit by a car. There's a fundamental safety issue with the location of that property from that perspective. And so I don't necessarily think of it as a matter of decency. I think of it much more as a matter of safety. So how are you gonna make sure that these kids don't do that, don't jeopardize their own safety, their own well-being? It's more than just compliance. It's very important. And I think from a board perspective, we need to know that you're gonna manage this seriously and make sure that that doesn't happen.
I just have a question. So I grew up here in this town. Are you from here?
No, I'm
Yes.
from Chicago.
Okay. How long have you lived here?
25 years.
All right. I was born,
35 years.
yeah, I was born and raised here, right? My family owns the outhouse, right?
Sure.
We've been here a long time.
Oh, yeah,
So we're going to police it just like they police those people walking out of those bars, right?
right.
Right. The VFW, the American Legion, all the places I grew up here my entire life, went to college here. So we're going to do the
Right.
same thing that all those people have done for all these years. So whatever the policing that they do, we'll be doing the same thing.
All
And
right.
I've seen all kinds of things happen in this town.
Of course, yeah.
Right. I've seen college students. I was a college student. I rented with a group of students on the square. I lived here.
Right.
Right. My family gave the land to the mount to build the mount.
Mhm.
Right. So students have lived on that square for at least 60 years. Right. I've seen it, lived it, and everybody who lives in Emmitsburg knows that.
Right.
Okay. So there's been bars, restaurants. I mean, there's 2 bars on the square, right? There's the club on the square. There was another one, and there was multiple times where people falling out those doors. And I've seen it my entire life. So I will police it the same way.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, very
All right.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hearing a concern for safety. I'm not seeing anything in the conditions under special exceptions that would address the issue that Mr. Slaughter is bringing up, but it is a genuine concern for the safety of the children.
I know.
Sorry.
I know.
They're all young according to me, but and the same with the FEMA students who walk down here and then walk back. That is a concern
Yes. Well, thank you.
I-
Appreciate it.
throughout the town.
And I think it's a valid concern. I mean, even if you're a bar owner on Main Street, you don't want people stumbling out on the
Right.
middle of 140 and getting hit by a car and in being inebriated. So I can attest to you that because of Mr. Ott's history in this town, we want to be the best neighbor and the best example of this special exception that we can provide.
All right.
Thank you.
And again, I would refer us back to the 5 conditions that we need to look at. And then the other conditions that we need to pay attention to, the 14 that are listed in the staff report. And it doesn't say anything about safety, but it does talk about the effect of such use upon the peaceful enjoyment of people in their homes. And, that might be a factor. Scott, do you have anything you would like to ask Ms. Peoples or Mr. Ott?
I
Again, if you could talk
Also-
into your mic. Thanks.
have a concern. It's not alcohol related. Has more to do with not impaired judgment, but people just not living up to the requirements that were explained to them as the terms to live in your building. The parking, trash. There's 11 separate individuals that need to be held accountable. It's not one problem if trash is out of order. Is it? Is there a plan for how that is going to be managed? And if not by you, Mr. Ott, is there a plan within the town? So we have a compliance officer. Is that going to be his daily responsibility?
I mean, sorry.
No, I was going to say you're welcome to answer that, but I wouldn't think that behavior would be the compliance officer. They're just looking at parking and things like that.
May I
Yes.
respond? Again, when you're looking at a lease, It is a contract between I rent to you.
Is
My-
it one lease or 11?
It's 11 specific leases because my agreement is with that tenant in that bedroom, that tenant in that bedroom. So I can say, tenant A, in my lease, I have a list of rules. Those rules become part of my binding contract with you, meaning in order for you to live here, you sign this agreement and you must abide by these conditions. The conditions can include you must comply with all noise ordinances. You must, not impair the quiet enjoyment of neighbors. You must place trash, whatever. It is a contract that is enforceable at law, meaning tenant A says, well, I'm just going to throw trash over there. We find out through our property manager, who Mr. Ott has testified is there at least once a week. We see a problem. We have a means to say, okay, tenant, you're in breach of lease. Frederick County Code says when you're in breach of lease, if it's a serious breach that threatens the health and safety or some kind of significant thing, we give 14 days notice under Frederick County Code. If it's a normal breach of lease, they didn't put the trash in the right receptacles, we give 30 days notice. If they do not correct those terms based upon what is in the lease, then we go to court and we get them out. So it's not just saying, hey, student, you can live here. These are adults with the capacity to contract that are legally bound by the terms in our contracts. A lease is a contract, and thus, if they violate what we prescribe for them, you can't do this, you must do this, they're out. It's that simple.
And so there is no police department in Emmitsburg. Who will police compliance with parking and trash removal, among other things?
Najili, would you like to explain the role of the
Code-
compliance officer?
Yeah, sure. We have a code enforcement officer. I mean, he's very active. He goes around town looking to see if people are parked right away or if there's any trash problems or any other violations. So he would be the one who would be looking out for that.
Again, with all due respect, I could be a family of 4 that moves in next door to you and be more unruly and more of an impact, a negative impact on your quiet enjoyment than a bunch of students. It's a case by case, it's a person by person. Some people live decently, some people do not. We can do everything that we can to control the type of people. I mean, we don't just rent to anybody. This is a high-end rental establishment. Background checks are performed. Mr. Ott looks at his tenants before he allows them to sign a lease, just as any prudent landlord does. I've spoken and I'm counsel for many people that belong to the Frederick County, Maryland chapter of the National Association of Professional Property Managers. We look at, I advise my landlords, and I've advised Mr. Ott on changes in landlord tenant laws. That's part of my niche in what I do as a practice. So I'm not only standing here as Mr. Ott's attorney, but I'm going to make sure that his leases are compliant with appropriate codes. And if the town has concerns about things like noise, I'm going to make sure that there's remedies in those leases so that the town can be assured that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're the best possible neighbors.
Does that address your concern?
It's the right answer. I don't know how else it could have been answered. But what it comes down to is execution.
I have a question.
Yes,
Real
sir.
quick. This one?
Yes.
So you have buildings in this town, right? On the square, right, that are falling down. And people have fell out and died, like off the front of them. And
You've
nothing-
done a beautiful
That,
job.
I know, but listen, nothing's safety, there's nothing even fixed about with the building. The rails are the same. A person fell off and died. Right? Nothing has been done. The building is still falling down, right? So I'm sitting here pleading a case for a building I put $1 million into. The doors in that building are $10,000 a piece. Okay. So I'm not going to have anybody in there, right, causing rampant to cause problems. But I'm confused, right, that I actually see this in town and I'm sitting here pleading a case to make the town look better.
And may I counter that with a question to you?
Absolutely.
Do you think that as a town, we do an effective job of holding people accountable to the municipal code that is pretty well documented?
I'm not sure, sir, to be honest with you, because I don't follow the town people around, you know, they're out
You
their
and
jobs
I
and I
are
do.
on the same page.
Yeah. So,
I'm
but
not sure either.
yeah, I'm not sure, but I feel like I'm on a crucifix here for raising the value of your town. Truly.
All right. Are you satisfied with the answer? You said that was the only answer that could be given.
It's a promise that we will insist on the tenants of your building respecting the building and the people around them and the town they live in. And I think that's a pretty classic response to any question having to do with you spent a lot of money improving the town. And if you don't make sure that the respect is forthcoming from the people living in your building, I don't know who else is going to do it. I don't see evidence of I want to be careful what I say, okay? You have built a unique building to Emmitsburg. I would dare say that there is no definition of a single building, or is it 3 buildings or 2 buildings? It's got 11 rooms in it. I'm not saying what you did is wrong. I think it was brilliant, and I wish you the best in it. My question is the town ready to step up and make sure that there's a relative respect of the people living in the building, for the neighbors, and for the town they live in?
Well, I would,
And if that's not the town's responsibility, whose is it?
mm,
Is it 11 individuals? Is it the owner of the building?
So let me just interject briefly. The standards that we have to apply here are very strict, and they're set forth in the code. And I understand your concerns, Mr. Frigger, and the desire to keep or, you know, improve the town and hope that people behave accordingly. This municipality, like many municipalities, their code enforcement is complaint driven. If a neighbor notices something, they pick up the phone, code enforcement goes out. You've already heard Najila explain that code enforcement, you know, tours the town to see how things are going. However, the test that is applied in determining whether or not this is a special exception that should be granted really relates to the criteria set forth in your code, and it does not go to the behavior of individuals. I hear what you're saying. I've heard what the landlord said, that, you know, they have a vested interest in ensuring that people behave appropriately. But in terms of what we're doing here this evening, it's the criteria in the code.
thank
All
you.
right, and
My-
so
Scott, my understanding is that it's the 5 conditions that are listed here. And then we are supposed to give consideration to the other 14 that are listed here.
so the definition of
In the
student
staff report.
housing or any other kind of building, that doesn't matter. That's not what we're here to talk about.
We're here to talk about the fact that the town enacted a zoning text amendment that said that student housing can be provided if they meet these following 5 conditions. And
Where
from,
did those 5 conditions come from?
from the zoning text amendment that was passed by the Board of Commissioners on June 6th of this year.
And so if I read in the municipal code that student housing is supposed to have 5 rooms, or if we allow people to have a B&B in Emmitsburg, they can serve 5 guests. They doesn't say anything about how many.
It says 1 off-street parking space for each bedroom, 1 person in each of the bedrooms. So since there are 11 bedrooms, you're correct, it would be 11 leases. The tenant the landlord who creates the lease with the tenant has a responsibility to enforce the lease. And
Who has the responsibility to update the municipal code?
the Board of Commissioners.
And so is that in the works? Or is that all being done by the contract that, I forget what you call it? You guys were submitting something that addresses the areas that might not be covered.
So the issue here is, what are the criteria that the Board of Commissioners determined should apply to a text amendment? So we had a lot of hearings about this particular text amendment. And there was a lot of discussion about what should be included within the text amendment. And so when they approved this text amendment, it was with the criteria that Ms. Walbrecker has discussed and which are set forth in the staff report. And those are the criteria that you have to consider. And the other component of this is state law. And there's this famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, case called Schultz versus Pritz. And it talks about what the duty of the Board of Appeals is. And when it comes to considering a special exception, the commissioners have already determined that absent some adverse condition that is in this particular location as opposed to elsewhere, for example, within the village zone, and if it meets all the criteria that are set forth in the code, this board, that's where your discretion ends. You
Right.
make the findings, and if it meets those criteria, the special exception should be granted. Now, I'm not telling you what to do with respect to this special exception, but that's the law. And
Mhm.
so the Board of Commissioners does consider ordinances. They, that's part of what they do. They're the legislators. And they look at the code, and Najila and I and my partner Clark have been looking at components of the code that we think are outdated or should be revisited. But it's an ongoing process, and it's an organic one, and it is lengthy. So we are doing the best we can.
So you're saying that activity is in process? You guys have been looking at it. The
Yeah,
code
that's-
is going to be updated.
Well, no, what I'm saying is we've been reviewing the code. I don't dictate what the Board of Commissioners does. And if they determine that the code's fine the way it is, then the code is fine the way it is. But we do look at, when something comes up, it's like, well, I wonder why it says that. Or for example, use of these antiquated terms like rooming house. Who calls that's old.
Right.
And so those are the things that we look at, but there's a very defined process that you have to go through, and we have to be directed to do it by the Board of Commissioners. And we have not received or at least I'm not aware of one, an omnibus direction from the board that, thou shalt go out and review the code. But, we're once again kind of straying from why we're here, which
Right.
is to address this particular application under the particular standards that were just adopted in June by the Board of Commissioners. And that's what the obligation is.
And that's after almost a year and a half or possibly 2 years of hearings
There was a
that have
lot.
been going on here at the town. I've been to some of the meetings where there was discussion back and forth between citizens who came in to talk about student housing, which is why I'm surprised that there was no testimony this time, but maybe it's because all the testimony's been given. But anyway, this is what the code says now in terms of special exceptions, the conditions for approving special exception for student housing. This is what it is. There's also been criteria that's been looked at, and those are these 15 criteria. So we need to look at what our duty is here. And I appreciate the comments that you're bringing forth. And that would be if there was some sort of adverse impact by this particular group, but I haven't been able to see any other than what is
I think
potentially
there's
conjectured.
one, and I'd like to ask Leslie. Is that okay?
Sure, you can ask me anything you like.
Mr. Ott remodeled 3 homes faster than we've been able to agree on what it is he's building and put it in our municipal code. If we approve this, is there now an obligation of the town to update the municipal code?
No,
The-
that's a completely unrelated issue. I'm not, I guess I'm not really sure. I don't understand what your concern is specifically, Mr. Frager, because, you know, the Board of Commissioners has a defined role. The Board of Appeals has a defined role. And the Board of Appeals on this particular evening's defined role is to determine if the criteria for the special exception have been met by this particular applicant and whether this particular use in this particular location causes an impact, an adverse impact that is different than it would be elsewhere within the zone. And I think that the testimony thus far has indicated that, you know, these are people problems. They're not unusual. You know, they happen wherever you have people. And so,
You
That-
made the statement that you didn't understand what my concern is.
yeah,
So
you're right. I don't.
Are you interested in me telling you what my concern is?
I'm not sure that I understand what it is either.
Are you interested in me telling you?
Go right ahead.
So I suffer an affliction, okay? I'm an engineer. I'm driven by requirements.
Mhm.
And the only way to know that a job is done is when the stated outcome matches the requirements that were in a statement of work or in a contract or something like that. Mr. Ott built a beautiful building that doesn't look like any other building in Emmitsburg. I
is-
don't understand why that's not a problem.
Well, it was constructed in accordance with the code. It's passed the building inspections from that are administered by Frederick County, because Frederick County is the entity that administers these safety and, you know, engineering and housing requirements. And I am not aware of any aesthetic code requirements.
I'm not
So I'm
talking
not-
about aesthetics. I'm talking about form, fit, and function. And so student housing in the municipal code, I thought said 5 people. He's got 11.
No, that's not what the code says.
It's not what the code says anymore. There was a zoning text amendment, which means the code has been changed.
But you told me the text amendment addressed 5 items.
It does. They're right here. Those are the 5 items that they address.
And
not
it doesn't
5
matter how
people.
many rooms.
No,
the
it's
restriction
one
is-
person per bedroom.
That is
I see
correct.
that loud and clear. I see it in writing.
Okay,
But what I'm saying is, I'm just a dummy, okay? I read something that said 5 bedrooms to student housing.
Technically, Mr. Freger, it's actually 2 separate units, to be honest with you. The one unit is 4 bedrooms. Okay. And the other unit is 7.
So,
And Mr. Ide, I hope you understand that my concern is not with anything you did. My concern is we don't have documented requirements.
okay, Mr. Prager, the documented requirements
I-
in the
I
code
heard
are
that.
listed in front of
I'm
you.
ready to make a motion in accordance with these 5 requirements. Why are we still admiring the problem?
I don't know that we're admiring the problem. We need to make a decision about whether to grant the special exception based on these 5 conditions.
Based on these 5 conditions, who would deny it? I'm making a motion. Am I allowed to do that?
What is your motion?
My motion is that Mr. Ott has provided 3 former buildings into 2 that far exceed the condition that any one of the 3 were in before he started. He's providing 500 feet, although it doesn't say whether or not it's on the street. What if there's a house right behind it and it's less than 500 feet from it, or one across the street? Does the requirement say that there can't be 2 student properties in 500 feet on the same
Yes.
street?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't read that.
Are you reading the same thing I'm reading? The dwelling unit shall not be located within 500 feet of any other property operating as student housing.
And what if the property is in the backyard or across the street?
Is it within 500 feet?
If it's across the
Any
street,
direction?
it might be the mayor's house. I don't know.
Okay. Our job here tonight is
I've already got it. I made a motion.
could you please repeat your motion?
The motion is that providing Mr. Ott takes these beautiful buildings that he built, he's not going to build any more within 500 feet. That's 1. There's only going to be 1 person per bedroom. That's 2.
Mhm.
There's going to be trash containment for each of the bedrooms.
Mhm.
That's 3. There is 1 parking place per bedroom. That's
Mhm.
4. And the 5th one is, I don't know how this plays in, but this piece of paper says 101 to 103. This one says 101 to 105. There used to be a 101, 103, and 105. But the town recommended that Mr. Ott combined 3 homes into 2, and he's done that. So based on those statements, is there any reason that we should not approve this?
So your motion is to approve the special exception request for the case that we're hearing tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
That's-
But if it were left up to me, I would add, and there is a responsibility of the town to document what is now a requirement, a municipal text contract.
All right. Do I hear a second for the motion to approve the special exception request?
Without my stupid add-on.
Motion second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Leslie, is there anything that you would like to add before we take a vote on this motion?
No, I think that Mr. Frager articulated the factual findings in support of the motion and included them in the motion that indicates that the evidence suggests, or the evidence before the board is that the criteria are met. The only thing I would suggest, however, is if there's anybody here that wants to testify, we should give them the opportunity before you take a decision.
Is there anyone here who would like to testify?
I think there's
Solved.
one more requirement. Mr. Ott, the town of Emmitsburg should thank you for doing such a beautiful job with those buildings.
Second.
Third. All right, so discussion, any other discussion? All right, discussion is closed. It's time for a vote on the motion to approve the special exception request based on the 5 conditions outlined by Mr. Frager. Thank you. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It does look great. All right. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Second.
No, I can't make a motion. You made the motion to adjourn. All right, hot dog. We have a motion to adjourn and we have a second, and it is now 7:55. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Woo. All right.